All right, hey Airofit family. This is Sean Coakley. I am the Airofit Master Instructor. Very lucky today to have Ole, which I will mispronounce his last name in a second, Hesselbjerg. That's maybe the best I could do. Is that good, Ole?
Yeah, that's very good.
Okay, good. So we're here to talk today a little bit about a very unique sport and also talk about some conceptual ideas around the unique type of training for the sport of steeplechase, and also here to learn a little bit about maybe some of the history of how steeplechase is for athletes, and why athletes might choose the steeplechase. I think it's a very unique sport, Ole. I think you might agree. So I was maybe hoping just in the beginning that we could let our audience know a little bit more about who you are and maybe what attracted you to this wonderful sport of yours that you've committed your life to in a lot of ways. So maybe you could just share a little bit of that with us if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I've been running the steeplechase for many years now, probably 15 years. And it pretty much started with me beginning running at an early age. My mom was a recreational runner and she would drag me out to races. And I would always win, and winning is fun.
Right.
And then I actually started in a club doing running, just normal running or whatever you want to say, call it. And then my coach dragged me to the side one day, and he asked me, like, there's a spot opened on some club competition on the steeplechase because they didn't have anybody, and he asked me, do you want to do it? And I was like, sure. And at that point I wasn't sure what it was. Mm-hmm. So I did it and I won as well first time. And then it's just been going on from there. And to break down the steeplechase, I guess it's a middle distance running event with 35 barriers through the 5K or through the 3K that we run. There is 4 barriers per lap, and then there's one water pit that you have to jump over.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as I know, I was just watching the U.S. Olympic trials a week ago out in Oregon, and I saw the steeplechase runners there. Those barriers are very unforgiving. They're very they're not like hurdles. So for people who don't know much about steeplechase, if you run into a barrier on steeplechase, that barrier is not going to move, right? So.
Yeah, no, I actually had an accident here 2 weeks ago on my last race where I hit my knee on the very last barrier, and I resulted in like a huge bone bruise on my femur, and I've been slowly getting back into running ever since. Yes. So yeah, they definitely don't move.
Yeah, so it's a very, to me, as a breathing coach and just a person interested in endurance capacity in general, it's a really unique thing because it's running interrupted. Right, you're running and you're getting tired over time, and you have to negotiate these hurdles. The hurdles obviously don't get lower or get easier over time. So there's a level of focus and concentration, I would assume, Ole, that you have to have when you're in this race, let alone just navigating the traffic of the race. So maybe I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about the conceptual planning for a race and what it feels like to actually be in a steeplechase event, because to me it looks quite complicated from a strategy perspective.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of tactics going into it, and you really have to think about your energy, because if you're too tired going into the last kilometer or something like that, it's the barriers are just going to be brutal on you. Mm-hmm. So it's very much about controlling and knowing yourself to the extent that you time it perfectly. So when you cross the line, you're done. Because if you're done too early, you're not going to get over those barriers. I think they are 91.4 centimeters high. Yeah. So they're actually pretty high. That's like around my hip, I guess. And then as you also talked about in the race, when you have people around you, it's also about positioning yourself so you can get over the barrier, and it's nice to have a clear view at the barrier, but that's always not the case. And then you have to just like kind of key off the other guys if you can't see it. When it's a slow tactical race, usually we can be running in a big pack, and then you have no clue when the barrier is coming. And then it's basically just jump when the guy in front of you is jumping.
Oh, that sounds
So yeah, there's a lot
sounds
of tactics
terrifying.
and a lot of focus.
Sounds
Yeah,
terrifying to
that is
somebody
definitely
like
not
me.
the most fun.
Yeah, no, of course. So I a little side question, just from watching it and not being an expert in that event. If you're out in front during the race, do you work to jump and land on the opposite side of the water in the pit? Does it affect you when you have wet shoes running the rest of the race? Like, what does that feel like when you're, what's your mental choice if it was optimal, I guess, at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean it's all about using as little energy over the barriers as possible, and it, depending on the pace that you're running, most people get one foot in the water and then land with the other one dry, but you don't notice a wet foot during a race. Like the
Gotcha.
adrenaline, there's so much going on, you don't really, yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah, yeah, no, okay. That was just my personal curiosity, so I just wanted to kind of see what you would say about that. So it sounds to me like, Steeplechase found you, right? I don't know personally a lot of people who are born, with the idea that I want to be in Steeplechase, right? So obviously it's a different type of, I would assume there's some different types of training thought processes that you have to approach it. So if it's a middle distance running event, take a standard middle distance runner versus a steeplechase runner. What's the variation, or what are the differentiations in terms of your day-to-day trainings, and what do you have to augment or add as a steeplechaser that would make you different than a standard runner, I guess, at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I think that depends on who you are as a profile, as an
Mhm.
athlete. At the moment, there's almost no difference in my training compared to what I would do if I would just be focusing on running a 5K, for example.
Okay.
But that's because on an early age, I spent a lot of time uh, learning the technique and learning how to deal with barriers, and spend a lot of time with hurdle drills and stuff like that. So now it's just, I wouldn't, maybe it's second nature. It's just muscle memory. So I don't spend very much time on that at all anymore, actually, because I don't have to.
Okay. Yeah.
So for me, it's just about becoming the best runner possible.
Gotcha. Well, I would say you're probably fortunate in that regard, that and other people have
And
to
I think I
train for
am for
that.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. So you before we got on this call together, you were mentioning to me, that this has been a lifetime kind of goal, right? But for the last 5 years is really where you started, I guess I would call it, to optimize your training to reach the Olympics, if that was your goal per se. So maybe you could backtrack for us to 5 years ago, Ola, and tell us, what inspired you to kind of make that commitment? Because it is a commitment. It's a tremendous amount of time. It puts your life on hold in a lot of ways, or other areas of your life. So what was the spark that kind of made you say, this is the time I'm going to do this?
Well, I was in Rio at the Olympics, so this is actually my second Olympics. And in Rio, I was chasing the standard all season, and once I got there, I was tired and fatigued, and I didn't perform as well as I wanted to. And I told myself, okay, if we're gonna go back to this level of competition, I want to be ready to compete, and that's what the last 5 years has been about. It's just preparing me. So the qualification process and all that stuff would be, I wouldn't call it straightforward because it definitely wasn't, but at least now I think I'm capable of being competitive.
Yeah. So were there new coaches that came into your lives? Or is it just doing more of the same type of training? Like, how did you become more intelligent around your training, I guess, to start make those leaps in
Yeah,
your times?
that's a good question. I mean, as any athlete, I think it's a learning process. Every year you evaluate what you've done right, what you've done wrong. You meet a ton of people. Currently, I'm in Samoa on training camp preparing for Tokyo, and there's so many people to learn from, and you talk about it all day, every day. Like you say, it's who you are. So yeah. Besides, yeah, just learning from experience, you just evolve by talking to people and realizing, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. Maybe we can implement this, or that makes a lot of sense to me, or yeah, that doesn't look that smart, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
What can you recall the moment? Was there, and if the answer is no, that's fine. But was there a moment where there was an epiphany after Rio per se, where you said, I'm now a different athlete? Like, was there any point in your training where you felt like you made an exponential leap, or was it just kind of slow and gradual over time?
For me, it's actually been very slow and gradual over time. Every year I've improved myself, small steps, and every year I've been focusing on being more and more professional about not just my training, but also everything around. Like you said, you gotta be like kick to your sleep, stress levels, and all that stuff. There's so many aspects of performing at this level. But I will say that I did I didn't switch coach, but I got an external, I guess you can call him, consultant over my training, and that kind of switched my momentum for being a very focused on short distance and speed to focus way more on endurance, and that have definitely given me a boost.
Yeah, and when did that happen, Ola? Roughly, is that recent?
A year and a half ago.
Okay. So I would say that's relatively recent, I guess, in terms of your lifetime plan, if you will, to do this.
Sure.
So yeah, it's incredible how a different perspective can change things every once in a while. So what about COVID for you? Like you mentioned stress. I talk to lots of high level athletes all day long. I'm lucky to do that. And everybody has their unique perspective on training in a bubble. What's that been like for your mental state, and how are you dealing or coping with that as an athlete?
Yeah, actually, Corona, maybe for an athlete, it doesn't change that much, I guess, because I'm pretty used to being isolated. I'm pretty used to focusing, besides training with my group, I say no to ton of social events because there's no time, or you're tired and you got to be in bed by 10 to get the hours of sleep that you need. So for me, it wasn't that big of an issue, actually.
Yeah, well, that's good. And that's great for you. I guess when I speak with a lot of other people, it's the unknown of what's going to happen at the Olympics per se, right? So you do all this training and you prepare, and a lot of them sometimes, get caught up in the thinking about, is it going to happen? And so just general state of curiosity, I'll call it, not necessarily, being anxious. But
that's a very good point. But I've also, like I told you before, like we work on a lot of levels, and one of the levels is that me and my coach have many times experienced things that are out of our hands, and you can be frustrated and you can be annoyed, or you can just sit back and say, okay, we're going to continue doing what we're doing and let the things that we can do nothing about just try and forget them as much as possible. And that's what I did with Corona, or tried to do at least.
Right. Yes. Do the best we can. Right. Yeah. So obviously, I obviously am a breath coach for the people who don't know my background, and I've been working here at Airofit for a while. So far, a few of the things that you've said, endurance training, stress, sleep, all those things, those are part of my life on a day-to-day basis when I'm working with athletes. And I know you've been utilizing the Airofit device for a little over a year now, I believe. I was hoping maybe we could start to talk a little bit about how that's added an additional ancillary potential benefit for you and what your general experience is. And then maybe we can get into a little bit more details in some of those specific areas as we go. But what's life been like once you got in touch with respiratory muscular training, if you will? And have you subjectively felt a difference or objectively felt a difference? What's it been like so far?
Like I talked about before, there's so many aspects about training, and I try to be as professional as I can regarding everything, and that's sleep. And then I stumble upon Airofit and breathing training, and after reading about it, I got an Airofit actually through my club at the time, I remember, and then I've just been working with it, reading about it. And for me, it's especially, I use it in different scenarios, I would say. I try and use it when I'm stressed, when there's something, yeah, like Corona, that maybe, okay, I have a day where I'm stressing about, okay, the Olympics might not become or happen after all. And then it's a good tool to just be aware of your breathing, I guess, and help you calm yourself down. I try, if I'm in bed and your mind's just all over the place,
Yeah, of course.
it's just good to take a step back and then, okay, let's focus on the breathing pattern, or just calm yourself down. Besides that, I've tried to use it in especially my weight training sessions, to try and generate the right pressure in my core when I do some heavy lifting. I found that beforehand, I think I was creating too high of a pressure in my abdominal structure, just pushing everything I got. And then after just learning about myself and my own breathing, it was necessary. And then with a little lower pressure, it feels actually easier lifting.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are main areas, I guess.
That's cool. I'm actually glad you said it that way, right? Because I think what I hear underlying in that comment is and I try to train people outside of breathing. I try to talk about training people's habits of breathing at the end of the day. And that comes through conscious awareness at the end of the day. And I think, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, in regards to the Airofit device. When I talk to people who just pick up the device, and maybe their mind is a little bit scattered or they can't focus, I actually try to explain to people that the device is very beneficial for focus, because there's nothing more important than following that red ball across the screen, right? At the end of the day, and making sure it's aligning. So the thoughts kind of disappear. But over time, consciously creating new breathing habits so you could perform in unique situations in different ways under different parameters, that becomes really important. Because like you, when you're running in the steeplechase, I would assume your form is unconscious, right? You're doing it because you've trained it so many times that you don't have to think about it anymore.
Exactly.
And so have you found that just by interacting with the Airofit device in general, that it's made you more conscious, made you more aware of how you take breath in and out of the body in different situations?
Yes, like I just told you, it's like when I go to bed at night and I'm stressed, I think about it. When I do my weights, I think about it. If I do stretching and I want to stretch a little harder, I think about it. But doing running, like you said, most of it becomes muscle memory, and it's just, I just assume, especially doing races, I don't focus on that much besides just beating the guy in front of me, I guess.
Sure.
But I try to utilize this in my training, just like any other exercise, that I try to do it better in training. And then once it comes to competition, it's just second nature. So when I run, I try and think about, okay, breathe properly, calm your breath down, deep breath, trying to come all the way down to in your stomach and not just keep it in your chest, I guess. So yeah, like I just use the device and the techniques it gives me, like I would any other exercise pretty much, or any other drill that I would do.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think that's important for our audience to hear, and I talk about it, I use the term directional breathing, right, at the end of the day, because I think generically, even great athletes, until they learn about the science of breathing, if you will, they don't necessarily think about where their breath goes, how they access their breath, and they probably have not trained in isolation their respiratory muscles, if you will. So from the beginning, as you know, Ola, Airofit measures things, right? Which is kind of one of the things that makes it unique. It's not just a resistance trainer at the end of the day. From your first day using Airofit till now, or over time, did you notice any capacity changes? Did you increase your inspiratory or expiratory strength at all? Like what did you notice personally for you as you were using the device?
I went from, I think the first time, or the first couple of times I used it, I had like around five liters of what they call VLC.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I can get around 8, but it varies a little bit. When I can clearly feel if I'm training hard, my performance decrease. When I'm fresh and I don't train as well, my performance increase in the app as well. So I think when I'm fresh, I can get just over 8 liters.
Okay, and that's somewhat of a dramatic difference. And let's
Yeah,
I,
for
I want to
sure.
be I want to be transparent for our audience, right? Ola and I somewhat know each other, right? So we've had conversations before. Um, so Ola brought up VLC, or vital lung capacity, and I don't want to get into the weeds, Ola. You and I could talk more scientifics maybe down the road, but for now. I think you know my take on vital lung capacity, right? The academics, the doctors, the physios of the world traditionally have been trained to think that vital lung capacity is finite at the end of the day. So here at Airofit, when we make claims with athletes of increased, I think our website historically said performance, I think it should say capacity in a lot of ways, right? We talk about accessing the majority or more VLC. So if VLC is finite, I'm okay with that. Most people don't access 100% of their vital lung capacity. So we've started to use the term accessible vital lung capacity. So it's a little softer for the academics in the world, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to exhibit the idea that if someone like you, a top performing athlete, can go from mid fives to eight, something obviously shifted. So we have to be able to talk about it in some type of terminology that allows that to be true, right? And if we cap it and say that's impossible because vital lung capacity can't increase, well, then we're missing an opportunity to talk about what I call human potential at the end of the day, or going beyond what people understand today, right, and accessing it. So with that change in your accessible lung capacity, are you able to, if you weren't looking at the screen and you didn't know the numbers changed, would you say that you subjectively feel better, feel lighter? Because I work with some of the guys in the racing in the Tour de France right now, for example, and their comment when they come back to me is, I just feel more confident because I could access my breath easier. And that doesn't speak necessarily to the data points, but there's a sense of confidence and a sense of assuredness that they have because they feel lighter, I guess some of them say. So did you experience those subjective changes beyond data as well?
To be honest, not really, but
Okay.
it's also like if I go do a workout that I've never been capable of doing before and I run times that I've never been capable of doing before, then I do a run the next day. I don't necessarily feel any better. I don't feel like, because it's on such a small scale that we keep on moving, keep on progressing.
Sure.
Um, but I am a data guy. I like looking. I look at my sleep pattern. I look at all that stuff. I have heart rate monitors and all that, and I can tell that when I'm out running and I concentrate and breathe the way the Airofit is teaching me to breathe, that I can lower my heart rate. But I think it's the benefits on a marginal scale that it's so hard to
Yeah.
to actually have a feeling of.
Yeah. And that's a fair statement. So I'm gonna categorize you in the top 1% of the world, right? You're an Olympic athlete. So when it comes to weekend warriors, they might have a different feeling because you are talking, marginal gains. And at your level, a marginal gain could be the difference between a podium and not coming close to the podium at the end of the day. So it is a different world, if you will, in a lot of ways.
For sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. No, that's really cool. You know, in terms of those marginal gains and in terms of using other technology, right? One of the things that I've always been interested in is I love heart rate monitors. I love things like Whoop and other things like that because we're interested in looking for correlations of data. Whereas before Airofit and after Airofit, your HRV, for example, is different, or your zone training. You could work to zone 4 and your heart rate is at zone 3. So can you maybe
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about any of those noticeable correlations that you might have noticed, Ola? Because even if your percentage gains are small, those correlations could be really important from a data understanding perspective.
Yeah, I think the biggest is when I running that I can lower my heart rate,
That's huge.
and that's pretty incredible. I always have a heart rate monitor on, but I usually run or use lactate measurements when I run. Um, but I can look at my watch, have my heart rate going on a run, and then I can just by focusing on my breathing, I can lower that heart rate a few 2 to 3 beats. I think that's the most clear indicator of what it's done for me.
Yeah. So I'll ask you the question. So what is your understanding of why that's happening? Like, are you able to explain to yourself as a data-driven guy that Airofit or breathing, breath conscious breathing, I'll call it a combination of those, how and why does that allow your heart rate to lower? I mean, at the end of the day, you're working the same rate. Your VO2 max is right. Your scores on your VO2 max might not change. So what's the explanation? And I know you and I want to talk about that stuff anyway, so I'm curious just to see what you think about it.
Yes, I would say in general, and like you said, we've talked before, and I also read about this stuff on my own, just by training my breathing muscles, my diaphragm, my intercostal muscles, and the muscles that I use to breathing when I go for a run, and I focus on utilizing those muscles correct, then I can tell that they just become more effective. And I think that's why I'm seeing a lowering in heart rate. At least that's my analysis.
Okay. Yeah, again, there's a lot of possible theories out there, and I'm a theory guy too. I know we're not yet at the place where there's reams of academic published statements about why these things happen, but there's some really good theory. One of the freediving world champions that I was speaking to, Ole, the other day, who also has some pretty advanced degrees in biomechanics and biophysiology, was talking about the simple nature of additional space in the pleural cavity so the heart has more room to operate. So if you're able to maintain a larger thorax cavity or pleural cavity, if you will, there's simply less pressure on the heart. And I'm gonna give that a 0.001% component to some of the possible ways that your heart rate could slow down. So I think it's early days in a lot of ways. I think it's easy for us, you and I, to talk about the possible definitions of hypertrophy in your inspiratory and expiratory muscles. I think we can probably claim those things, but I think we're starting to get into the world of closing the gap between theory and objective scientific understanding of why being able to draw more breath into the body and breathe slower over the time could actually help bioadaptation and physiological changes in the body. As you might know, I come from a world of freediving in addition to competitive sports. So I like to talk in the idea of carbon dioxide management and other things like that affect the body. So I was wondering if I could ask you, because I know you're an intelligent guy and I know you research a lot. Do you think in terms of gas exchange? Because if you know the Bohr effect, right, where carbon dioxide elevated gradients in your blood allow the easier transport of oxygen to the muscular tissue and to the mitochondria. What are your thoughts on that? And do you do any type of apnea training or breathless state training to assist in your regular training that you do?
I use the Airofit, and in the Airofit, there's multiple programs that do apnea training or simulate apnea training. And I do that a lot. I also had a period where I just try to work on holding my breath. So I just took the freedom session, and then I just worked on holding my breath as long as possible. So yeah, I definitely do that. And like you said, also because I stumbled upon what you just talked about and wanted to test it out for sure. So yeah, I do that.
Yeah. How do you like holding your breath?
I don't like it at all, to be honest. It's a very, I don't know if I would call it claustrophobic feeling, but at the end, you're like, you want to breathe so badly, but you also realize, well, you can easily go another 30 seconds or so if you just put your mind to it. And that feeling is a very strange sensation.
Yeah, of course. And I want to take a moment, if you don't mind, if you could indulge me for 2 minutes. I do want to take a moment because when I'm training professional, real aerobic athletes like professional cyclists or professional runners or Olympic level runners or cyclists, they've been taught for a long time. And you and I mentioned this on text the other day, right? VO2 max as a measurement capacity. right? And I think of VO2 max as a measurement of capability, not necessarily a measurement of the capacity to win anything. And that's what I meant on our text the other day, right? It's not always the person with the largest VO2 max that gets gold medals at the end of the day. So in my mind, as a physiologist, a mechanic thinking person, there's got to be ancillary, components to it, to winning. Everything from willpower to 700 other chemical compound changes in your body that happen as an athlete while you're doing your work. So our exploration into VLC is really important, but to your point, holding your breath, I think, is really cool as an athlete. And as a coach, I like to use it as one of the first things I do when I bump into an athlete before they know anything about breathing, because as a coach, it gives me insight into the state of their nervous system, the panic attack. When does the panic come, right? And I think training through these breathless states and managing panic is maybe not the best way to say it in the terms of athletic world. It's really managing the release of adrenaline and managing the release of cortisol when I talk about these things, because as you know, cortisol is detrimental, and it increases inflammation and slows down recovery time. So as a coach, I use the breath holding test to see how long people can hold and how quick and how strong their panic mechanism kicks in, because it gives me some insight to when their body wants to pump adrenaline out and wants to escape an environment, which to me, I think is really insightful for the mental state of an athlete and how quickly they panic. So I've been adding more breath holding and apnea training to all of my athletes, because once they realize that a lot of it is mental activity that stops them from holding their breath longer, and they start to understand the carbon dioxide relationship with oxygen, they start to gain a confidence that they can manage that, and they're not fearful of running out of breath anymore. And I argue there's some real subjective confidence that's gained by understanding, I guess, your breath at a deeper level, and realizing what the limiting factors are. Meaning you're not necessarily running out of oxygen because you're alive. You probably have plenty. It's how do I utilize the oxygen best and optimize the delivery pathways, right, at the end of the day. So I don't know if you have a thought on that, but I just wanted to share that with the audience that's listening to this, because I think it's incredible information that even the top athletes in the world, at least a lot of them, maybe you know it, but not all the athletes in the world are aware of these things. So I was wondering, when you're training and you have this community of athletes around you, do you find that most of these athletes have not encountered this information before, or even if they have, maybe they don't have a good understanding of it yet?
I think the latter, actually. The more, once I got it, and once I got to learn about the Airofit and breathing in general, you start to talk with people about it, and you realize that, oh, okay, well, here's someone that I met in South Africa. He also has an Airofit, and he's also been working with it, but maybe not necessarily understand completely why and what, just because some coach gave it to him and told him, try this, this might be good for you. But yeah, I think I'm actually fairly surprised on how many people I meet that have tried breath training to some extent, some with breath coaches, or some with a device like the Airofit.
Yeah, that's great. So I mean, and that makes us happy, right? Because ultimately, it's about educating the world about the benefit of this, and having people capitalize, especially in your world, right? The best part of my day is when a coach of some great athlete will call me up and say, "We're just looking for 0.01%, Sean. What can you give us?" Right? And especially pre-Olympics, the phones have been getting more active, and the inbound emails have been getting more active, because they're all searching for that last little bit of performance to get in. So outside of breath work, Ole, maybe what's your approach? Everybody has a unique approach to fueling their body, the food that they put in their body and so forth. There's hyper vegan athletes, there's hyper non-vegan athletes, and everything in between, if you will. Where do you fit in? Like, what's your personal take on nutrition? Are you a middle of the road guy? Are you just a sensible diet guy? Like, how do you, the reason I'm asking, right, is because if I get geeky for a second, in the mitochondria, right, it's glucose and oxygen that we're searching for. So I'm wondering where you get the other source of fuel that makes that energy creation inside of the mitochondria, if you will.
Yeah, I think I would say to use your terminology, I'm a sensible guy when it comes to eating. I don't go too much into it. I just try and get what I need and then spread it out to like 4 or 5 times a day where I try to eat. But I'm not, a lot of athletes around me or in general is just very scared of fats and sugar and stuff like that. But I just try to get everything that I need to perform and not think too much about, if it's too much, too little, or.
No, that's good, right? I mean, the less thinking, the better at the end of the day. And a lot of times for athletes, right? The less analysis, the better in a lot of ways. I'm just curious, two-part question. Do you supplement at all? And
Yes.
The second component of that would be, what's your philosophy on hydration? Because that's a very important part when it comes to respiratory capacities. So I'd love to hear a little bit about those two, if you don't mind.
Yes, I do take supplements. I take protein. I have a few different ones actually. I take protein after weight sessions, whey protein. I take a recovery drink after my hard session, which is combination of protein and carbohydrates. Mm-hmm. And then on my really hard days, I take night protein before I go to bed, so my body have some building stones of protein to work throughout the night on my recovery. Yeah.
And what about look, I'm a real stickler when it comes to hydration, because just like breath, I think hydration is a highly misunderstood thing, maybe not by the top athletes of the world, but by the general public, right? So there's a lot of people that overhydrate, which is as bad as being underhydrated, right? So, how do you treat yourself as an athlete, and what are your sources, and how do you manage your hydration? Because, I'm sure you train in some hot environments. When I was watching the Olympic trials here in the States, it was very hot at that track. Yeah. And a lot of people were having to take breaks, and it was very difficult. So, how do you adapt, and what's your philosophy on that? Because I think it's critical at your level.
I completely agree. My coach is also stressing it. It depends on obviously where I'm at, and if I'm in altitude, which I am right now, you're more prone to dehydration. So I know I need to drink more. So what I do is pretty much I just try and constantly have a water bottle on me to drink throughout the day. Sometimes when we're in hot conditions and altitude condition, my coach would just like put a big water bottle in front of me and said, this has to be empty in 2 days or something, depending on how big it is. So you get an understanding of how much you actually need to drink. But of course, I don't just drink water. I also drink something with some salts and some electrolytes to obtain all the liquid that I consume.
Yeah, no, that's important. And I won't get into the weeds on that either, but I want everybody to know that, the componentry, if you will, of the water that you drink, like distilled water, I sometimes call it dead water, right? Could be very dehydrating if you're not balancing out the electrolytes in your body. So definitely, if you don't know about that world at all, do a little bit of research and make sure you're not dehydrating yourself by just drinking flat, dead water all the time. It can do some harm. And that's very disruptive to your respiratory system as well. So it's something to be cognizant about at the end of the day. So a couple quick ones. I know my little timer, Ole, is pointing to the wall that we're running out of time here, but I want to get a couple more quick ones in if you don't mind. So you mentioned you're at altitude. Where are you, and how long have you been at altitude, and when are you coming down to start to acclimate again prior to the Olympics? Like, how long are you going to be there?
I'm in St. Moritz in Switzerland right now with pretty much all the European runners that's getting ready for Tokyo. Besides that, this year I've been on the road like a crazy person. I've been in South Africa. I've been in Kenya. I've been in France, all on altitude camps. And I am here the minimum of 4 weeks. I like 5, but a minimum of 4. And I leave the 17th, I think, 17th of July, and then I fly to Tokyo the 21st, and then I compete the 30th. So around 2 weeks before my race, I'll go down.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, listen, I would love to talk to you for hours more. Unfortunately, I can't do that, right? But hopefully we'll pick this conversation up again, and I'll definitely be following your journey, Ole, with excitement. As you make your way to the Olympics, we're all pulling for you here at Airofit. We wish you all the best. We know you've been putting in a lot of hard work. I always like to, if I can, I don't know if you wanted to maybe say hello or give a shout out to anybody who has helped you along the way. I always like to offer that to you. So your coaches, your family, your friends, is there, anybody, all the people that are supporting you, right, at the end of the day?
Yeah, well, yeah, like there's a huge supporting system. This is not anything that I've been able to do on my own at all. So that would be a long list of people to thank.
Well, we can keep it generic and mention them in mass. That's fine. I know how important that is to be supported. And listen, no, I understand and appreciate the sacrifice that you're doing. And of course, anybody here, anytime you need help from us here, it's always welcome. We're willing to help you. So again, I guess
I appreciate that.
Best of luck, my friend. Keep up the good work, and we'll really be pulling for you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, listen, I guess I'll catch up with you soon, Ole. We'll talk soon.
For sure.
Thank you for watching On Air with Airofit. If you liked this episode, make sure to subscribe to our channel and visit our Instagram and Facebook page for more. And most importantly, make sure to stay a breath ahead.